thereafter, but in 1912 they bought their last horse-drawn piece of apparatus. This is ladder 29 and chemical 11. Chemical 11 became engine 52. They're out on Callender Street. Again, this is the early motorization of the Boston Fire Department. You can see on ladder 29 under the driver's seat the nice booster tank, which would help them out quite a bit in stopping incipient fires. Ladder 31, Oak Square in Brighton, and that firehouse should have been on the list of those that are still in business, right? That's still in operation out there. This was a shot I put in. It shows the horses still standing by at the fire. They put blankets over them. The 2-alarm fire on Oliver Street in downtown Boston before they got fully motorized. You know, the Boston Fire Department, we look at fires, we look at apparatus, and it all goes back to the human element. It's the people that did the job. It's these guys like this Engine 3's crew on the roof of their house over at Harrison Avenue and Bristol Street. There's just one typical picture looking back all those years. To look at the faces of the guys that actually did it back then. These are the guys that earned the reputation that we shared in and tried to carry on during our careers in the fire department. It's always terrific to look at these faces of these guys that are now long gone. Back in 1912, they relocated a fireboat from Central Wharf up to the new quarters. You can see them at the bottom of the photo at Northern Avenue Bridge. And that stayed in service till around 1954. And 1969, it collapsed into Boston Harbor. But that served as Engine 44's quarters up until 1944. That's the fan pier right behind you where the Moakley Courthouse stands now. And over to the right, you can see some of those railroad sheds, and that certainly provided great kindle for fires over the years, those railroad sheds. The very bottom left-hand corner, you can see the roof of a building. That's the dock tender's house at the Northern Avenue Bridge. When I was fire commissioner, I had a phone call from a young lady. She called and she wanted to buy it. And I said, well, it's not mine, you know, I can't sell it. She said, well, I called up City Hall. I wanted to buy that building at the end of the pier, and they said the fire department owned it. So Commissioner Frazier was going to hit it, and I was going to let him know that he owns this building out on the end of the waterfront. I decided not to take a check from her. I thought it was the right thing to do. Nice picture of the crew of Engine 31. We had 3 boats in service. The waterfront, many miles of combustibles. Charlestown, East Boston, downtown, over through South Boston, right up through South Bay, lumber yards, coal yards. Boston was the #2 port in the United States. They were #1 until Erie Canal got built, and then New York became the port of choice because of the shipping advantage going across the country. This is a nice picture of, what's that, Chemical 5. That became Engine 42's forerunner. But the configuration of this engine continued for years. It got the deck gun up top, had a split hose bed on the back, got the chemical tank, which is a booster tank underneath. And these wagons, this type configuration, stayed with the fire department right up through the early 80s. It was Commissioner Stapleton took a vote of the deputy chiefs whether to get rid of the double unit pieces and go for the singles, which we did at that time. This is a picture up in Grove Hall, a nice picture of one of the early motorized pieces. That's Engine 10 up at Grove Hall. I don't know what they were doing there in their uniforms and fire gear, but I suspect that fellow up in the back holding the cap might have been stealing it from Ladder 23's house. But nonetheless, it was a handsome firehouse and had the arched doors then. Nice picture of the old apparatus. Just a quick talk about fire alarm. Back then, the fire alarm box on the street was the quickest way of notifying the fire department, and I personally think it's still the quickest way of notifying the department today. But the department back then was totally dependent on fire alarms. Telephone were in the incipiency. They really weren't fully utilized yet, so those street boxes were really essential. Back in around 1912, 1913, they had come up with the non-interfering box. Before that, if 2 boxes on the same circuit were pulled, they would interfere with one another. Sometimes the signal wouldn't come through right. But now they had developed the non-interfering box, where the second box would not interfere with the first. Further development would go so that they come in with the three-fold box, where the second box pole would hold on and try to take the circuit 4 times. Finally, it would shut the other box off and send its own signal. But that's a whole other subject, talking about the fire alarm system. Nice picture of box 10 there, firefighter Conley, he's tapping in. They had to be telegraphers to tap in and talk and communicate with the fire alarm operators over in the Fenway. Well, at this time they would have been on Bristol Street, up in the headquarters. Back around 1913, they started renumbering the boxes in Boston. The numbers had sort of gone out of control a little bit, and there was a need really to get the city organized box-wise for the numbers. And they did a renumbering using the 4-digit boxes. They needed more boxes in the city because it was extremely important to get the fire department as soon as possible. So they did the total renumbering, and the system we have today, with minor changes, is basically what they did 100 years ago. Here is a transmitter. It was powered by falling weights, where the operators at fire alarm would set up the box number and transmit it out over the circuits. They were using these up through the 1980s till they got computerized, still cranking up using the falling weights. And one of these machines has gone down to the Smithsonian, and they had several of them. The other one is in the hallway over at the fire alarm office. They are really a beautiful piece of work made of brass. Here's the crew up on Bristol Street, up on the top floor, standing by all their circuit boards and the equipment. Here's the inside of that fire alarm office, top floor, skylight. Again, there's your transmitters. Back then, they were still striking the outside bells. The people were getting a little sick of it because there were so many alarms, but there were still some public bells striking. Those were primarily to notify the callmen that they were needed and they'll know where the fire was by counting the number. The last bell to ring in the city was Faneuil Hall's bell downtown, and that was stopped for a while, and the police officer assigned to the traffic in Haymarket Square complained because he didn't know the apparatus was coming. It'd be by surprise. Before, when he heard the bell, he'd know that he could clear the way for the apparatus. So they reinstated the bell, but some years later it was discontinued. I can remember Ben Ellis telling me hearing that bell ring. Within the next first few decades, the department would really go under a lot of change. 1912, 1913, there were pivotal years when this motorization started. The department started a school on training automobile chauffeurs. A high-pressure fire service was being developed and fully installed. That high-pressure fire system was put in, not just because it was a nice idea, it was put in because the chiefs of the fire department were concerned there'd be a major fire and all the apparatus would be tied up somewhere, such as what happened with the Blacker Shepherd fire, and have a serious fire break out downtown and be no apparatus available. So the high pressure system was approved, it was designed, it was put in, and it's in place now, although we are in the process of removing it. It's no longer needed. But that is the reason for the high pressure system with separate pumping stations. Within the next couple of decades, the Boston Fire Department would have the first fire radio system put in for the fireboats. But within a few years, they'd be striking boxes over the radio, and I'm sure the Box 52 Association had something to do with that. And I'm sure they were pretty happy. I don't know if the wives like the idea of them beeping on those boxes all the time, but it's music to my ears. There'd be a new fire alarm headquarters located over in the Fenway, and that was recommended by the Board of Underwriters. You don't put your fire alarm office in the middle of your lumber district. It's not a good idea. It was put over into the beautiful spot in the Fenway. It's a beautiful area. When I was commissioner, there was some talk that they wanted to move us into Schroeder Plaza with the police, and we wanted to keep two separate stations. It made sense to have two different alarm centrals in the city, and they can operate as one or the other. The police can come over to us, which they have done, or we can go over to Schroeder Plaza. However, the city had the idea they could close up the fire alarm headquarters and move the park department in there. And that was going on pretty good till I told them that by the law that the legislature passed allowing the Boston Fire Department to build that headquarters in the Fenway, that it reverts back to as a park, except it no longer uses the fire alarm headquarters. And I believe, Frank, you shared that story with me, and that was one part of the reasons we were able to keep fire alarm at the Fenway. A couple of